Welcome to Happy Hour, where we're flipping the script on the traditional happy hour. Instead of winding down at the drink, we're here to talk about what actually makes us happy and learn from society's healers, therapists, coaches, elders, spiritual leaders, and everyone in between. Join us as we dive into stories, insights, and tools that help us grow, heal, and support one another. Whether you're a seeker or a seer, this is for you. I'm Anurag, founder of Happy, and this series will be hosted by myself, along with my co-hosts, Mira and Tess, and we're excited to explore new ways to bring more joy and well-being into our lives. So take a deep breath, and let's dig in.
Hey everyone, Tess here. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Happy Hour. Today's episode is featuring a longtime friend of Happy. Her name is Ektha Aggarwal. Ektha is a licensed clinical social worker and the founder of a group practice called Shakti Therapy. Shakti Therapy is really focused on treating the holistic being, and that's something I just love and deeply appreciate about her practice. She also runs an incredible organization called Jiva Mental Health, which focuses on destigmatizing mental health care within the South Asian population and providing affordable opportunities for individuals in that community to seek care. Thank you for joining us, and I really hope you enjoy this beautiful conversation I got to have with Ektha. Hello, Ektha. Welcome to Happy Hour. We are so glad to have you here. Ektha Aggarwal is an incredible therapist, licensed clinical social worker. She is also a nonprofit founder. She is also a tech founder, and she has been such an early ambassador and guide for us at Happy as we've been building the tools that we believe can help therapists like yourself and individuals going on their healing journeys to sort of have an ally in that process. So we are so thrilled that you're here at Happy Hour. And Happy Hour, as I've shared on the show before, is a space for coaches, therapists, spiritual guides to help us understand ourselves better and also access what's out there. What are the resources? Who are the clinicians doing this work? And what are the modalities that can serve us best at the moment that we're going through in our lives? So I'm just thrilled to have you here. You really embody the spirit of what we're going for at Happy, which is how do we use technology not as something that is counter to our work and becoming better humans, but how do we use it as a tool to actually help us connect better and be more in touch with ourselves. So I'm so glad to have you here, Ektha.
I'm so excited to be here, Tess, and I love this new type of version of Happy Hour. I'm already feeling a little bit of joy hearing you speak. And what a gift to be able to see Happy grow from a small company to the way it's expanding. And you are at the cutting edge of something remarkable. I think connecting mental health and technology to make our work easier is so important, because instead of focusing on the technical stuff, we get to be present for our clients, and that's the heart and foundation of everything. So I'm excited to support this and chat more about it.
Yes, amazing. Well, I'm so happy that we get to have this conversation. You know, I've known you personally over the years and just so impressed with your background professionally. And I'm excited to dive into all that you do because it's a lot. So let's start, because I think that one of the most moving things for people is, usually a therapist doesn't go into a room talking about who they are and what brought them to that work. But I think it's a really important place to start because, I know for you and I know for many, it's not just a profession. It's who you are and the purpose that you live your life through. And, dare I use the word dharma?
Absolutely perfect word to be using.
Yeah.
One thing I like to tell folks is my career in wellness and mental health isn't a career, it's a calling. I'm a daughter of two immigrants who migrated from Tanzania to London to the United States. So culture has always followed with me and community. Love wasn't ever expressed in words. It was served with the hot meals on the tables, the late nights my parents stayed up working with me on school projects. English was my second language, so I needed a lot of support. And there's so much beauty to that. But something that I've realized in my time is love wasn't expressed in words, which also means pain wasn't expressed in words. Sadness wasn't expressed in words. It's something we held as armor and we guarded it in us. There's a concept in India and even parts of Pakistan called Izzat. Izzat is family honor. And so we go out of our way in our community to protect our family honor. So we don't talk about what's bothering us. We don't talk about things that hurt us. We don't show emotion because gosh, dare we. It could be bring shame to the family. And it wasn't until college where I had such a traumatic experience. And through that trauma, what shocked me was it wasn't the trauma that hurt me. It was this concept of shame and judgment if the community found out, if my family found out.
Yeah.
And so I became obsessed with this idea of tribalism. Like, what is it that prevents us from sharing who we are to maintain that sense of community? And we realized in tribalism, we're willing to sacrifice anything for connection, anything for belonging. And I decided I had to be the person I couldn't find. And I had to change that and create this community, which is Shakti therapy. And I really believe this philosophy that we don't have to maintain silence to belong. And I want to create a world where we can shed those armors and still belong and break these generational patterns that we've grown up in.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, Ektha. There's so much that connects for me hearing your story, just because I think it's pertinent to our conversation. My family also is immigrants from several different places, right? Originally from Lebanon, then immigrating to Colombia, South America, then immigrating to the U.S. So, the multiple languages, right, and the multiple cultures coming together to form an identity. I really connect with that. And what you're saying about, the tribalism and our community and how do we preserve the
Connection.
bubble, the connection. And one thing that came up for me as I'm hearing your story is this concept of, for some reason I'm forgetting the word, but it's a type of grief that others don't acknowledge, right? Or that it's, if you have a death in the family or something, people acknowledge that. But say, for example, something happens to you personally and nobody around you knows, it's sort of a type of grief that you have to struggle with on your own.
Are you perhaps referring to anticipatory grief, like the grief of not being able to have children?
Yeah.
Right? You're not mourning a loss, but you're mourning something that you can't even have.
Yeah. I don't know if that's what I was going for, but I mean, I think that's also plays into the equation. But yeah, I relate to that notion. And what I've really worked on with my family is the understanding that expressing emotion is actually strength, So I love your purpose and hearing about how you chose to be this person for your family and beyond.
Yeah, thank you so much. One thing that I relate with you is absolutely expression is strength. And coming from Lebanon, coming from parts of Africa and also India, we have so many words for love, but we have so few words that actually express sadness or depression or worry and anxiety. And so literally what you and I are doing really here through our own expression of our emotions is rebuilding language, rebuilding community, rebuilding expression and safety in that. So I honor that process in you.
Oh, I feel it. And I see you so clearly right now. Thank you for sharing everything. So, I think this is very important for us to talk about how these insights led you to the work that you do today. You have two different organizations that you're at the helm of and the founder of, one being Shakti Therapy and the other being Jiva Mental Health. Jiva being a nonprofit and Shakti being your practice, which is a group practice with a very specific focus. And both of them are rooted in cultural awareness. And I think that speaks to what we're talking about right now. I'd love to hear a little bit about, how you begun both of these practices and, how they interplay together.
Yeah, absolutely. There are two paths with one purpose. Shakti therapy is really about depth, and Jiva mental health is a movement. So I'll start with Shakti therapy. I think you really touched on it. It's not just mental health. It really is emotional, cultural, and spiritual health. And at our group practice, we use a mind, body, spirit approach. The word Shakti itself is a Sanskrit word that means the primordial force in each and every one of us that's responsible for confidence, action, and healing. And why I love this so much is because as clinicians, we don't create that healing in you. We are just guides to awaken the healing and the wisdom and the confidence and the strength in you already.
Yeah.
And so in our brokenness, we are already whole. And the cure is within you. And that's a belief that, is pretty controversial in psychology. So, and, I think the other thing is we look at our wounds and we help folks retell their story from the perspective of their childhood, their culture, and their ancestor. And when we look at these three different angles, we find that there's a union. And in that union, that's where healing happens. So you can see Shakti is more than just mental health. It's a force within you that helps you move forward.
That is so powerful. I also had never heard the definition of Shakti, so thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, psychology really focuses on the mind, and the mind is such an important part. And so do we at Shakti. We look at how your beliefs and value systems are formed through experiences that you have through childhood and culture.
Right.
And they are directly responsible for your relationship with your friends, your family, your colleagues, but most importantly, your relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
So yes, we use CBT, DBT, IFS, all the lovely acronyms we love in psychology.
Yeah.
But what's also important here to understand is we work with the body. 80% of the trauma is in the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind is in the body, and we've learned that with The Body Keeps the Score and several other books that are out there.
Yes.
And so using things like meditation, trauma-focused yoga, tapping, all of those things help release the traumas that we can't really talk about.
Right.
And especially for people of color, expression of emotion, like we said, is not something common.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I think the last piece I'll say with Shakti is the spirit. That's your inner healing wisdom. For some, that's God. For others, it's nature, spirituality, energy, mission, purpose, soul. Whatever it is, we help you identify that term and build that relationship.
Yeah.
That way, we're not narrow focused on our lives, but we can see it from a grander, bigger picture. So then the little things from day to day no longer impact us because we know our purpose is so much greater.
That's so beautifully put. And at Shakti, I was actually a client of yours. So I know that you work with all kinds of people, but there is a specific focus on the South Asian community. And would you tell me a little bit about why you think it's important to have that kind of fit between an individual seeking care and, the therapist supporting them?
Yeah, great question. So we do focus on people of color, and then it's somehow gravitated to South Asian communities because there are just not a lot of South Asian clinicians.
Yeah.
And so that's what birthed Jiva Mental Health. And Jiva is a little bit different in the sense that it takes your own healing and makes it collective and community. So we're going back to that sense of tribalism and changing how shame and judgment is seen. And so in these spaces, and Jiva also actually has a meaning in both Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. And it means to breathe, to live. It's that life force energy. So powerful again.
Yeah.
And it's the cycle of birth and rebirth and gives us permission to make mistakes and be okay with it and start over.
How cool that this is what I love about language is that one word can both symbolize birth and rebirth and also breath, which they seem maybe like different things, but actually we are always reborn or have the opportunity to restart with each breath that we take.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, I think you asked a little bit about culture, and culture is so important because the foundation of who we are is rooted in the way that we are brought up. And we're not only brought up by behaviors, we're also brought up by culture. And when we look at a person's culture, we understand the way that they live day to day. I'll give you an example. In the Western community, there's this beautiful concept of setting boundaries. And when a person sets boundaries, they have agency and autonomy, and it's celebrated. And it should be, right? Because
I know where this conversation is going, and I absolutely relate as a Colombian Lebanese person.
And it should be celebrated because you are standing up for yourself. What a gift.
Yeah.
Now, if you do this in the Middle Eastern, Asian American, and even African communities to an elder person, you're not going to be celebrated. You're going to be shunned.
I actually, I have a funny story about that, which is that our mutual friend, the one that we met through, he was attending my mother's second wedding, and he didn't really, even though, I feel like there are some similarities in our cultures, he didn't really understand that he couldn't leave the party. If he wanted to go to sleep, he had to sleep in the center of the party, and he could very well rest his eyes there. But he couldn't leave before the 90-year-olds went to sleep. So I had to make that clear about my family system and how we operate.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if a clinician didn't know that, they would be sending these clients and saying, go set boundaries, go do this. And I cannot tell you the number of clients who come to our practice. That is the number one complaint. Like, I need a clinician who understands my culture because I have lost family because of recommendations made. Right? And I think another common one is grief and death.
Yeah.
We celebrate and mourn in such different ways. In the Western communities, it's all about letting it out, expression, crying, and taking that gunk out, and it's so powerful. But if we look at the African American community, that they hold that in. But if a clinician sees that as weakness, sees that as a lack of expression, they're missing out on the concept that holding that pain is actually staying strong for the community and embodying resilience. And that's what they're taught, especially for our men, right? So you can see culture plays a big role. And it really is a bridge where we can coexist both in healing and in who we are.
Absolutely. So, Ektha, my next question, I love on Happy Hour to kind of help increase literacy and understanding around terms. And I think we've been doing a lot of that in this discussion. But I wanted to talk about a theory that you felt like was a big light bulb for you. I know in my education around mental health, attachment theory, for example, when I started learning about that during my parents' divorce, it opened a lot of answers for me. And I'm just curious, what has been a theory that has been really impactful for you or that you would like our listeners to look at and understand.
I love the theory of inherited trauma. It's not something that's talked about more often, and I have my own take on it. So this theory really looks at culture and how pain is passed down through generation. Research has confirmed that pain, anxiety, depression, whatever it is passed down not only through our minds, but also through our bodies and our DNAs.
Yeah.
And it's all the struggles that our ancestors went through, colonism, immigration, war, whatever it is. And so there may be situations where you're doing something absolutely normal, but you have this like burst of anxiety that comes forward and you can't explain it. And so the theory of inherited trauma helps us explain that.
Yeah.
The beauty with this is people don't really understand that this theory shows us that how our ancestors developed a sense of survival and how the nervous system acclimated to be able to help prolong their life.
Yeah.
That's one. The other is if the theory of inherited trauma says that trauma is passed down, then there's something incredible that's also passed down.
Yeah.
Wisdom.
Wisdom and resilience.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely. And we miss this. We're so quick to blame our parents and our grandparents. And
Yes.
wow, look at all the wisdom that's passed down. And just for a second, something that just brings awe for me is in a generation where no technology existed, no medical advances existed, our ancestors survived long enough for you and I to be here. That's wild to think about. If we just pause
Crossed
for a moment.
oceans and, survived wars and
And I mean, animal huntings, right? Without a gun.
yeah.
Right? Like, how do you
Absolutely.
sleep at night without a house, knowing that a lion could have attacked you?
Wow. Yeah.
So the gift is you and I are here today, right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
it's a really powerful theory, and it helps us understand that when we deal with mental health, we help tell those unfinished stories that are encoded in us. And when those stories are fulfilled, then we heal.
yeah.
And what you do today, the way you live your life, the joy that you experience, the happiness you experience, the patterns that you break and the behaviors you develop, 20, 30,000 years from now, someone's going to be experiencing that joy because you did.
Oh,
Isn't
that's
that beautiful?
Such a beautiful thing to just hold.
Yeah.
My family, in spite of being doctors, actually geneticists, which is interesting from an epigenetics perspective to look at these things. They are fantastic storytellers. And so for me, I've always been curious about their stories and whatnot. And recently, I've been meditating on some really big questions about my life. And, when I actually access that place of meditation, I see the power and the wisdom of my great-grandmother, of my grandmother, and of my mother, and that maternal lineage. And I feel very connected to them. And so, yeah, I've been a student of this concept of shared trauma, but I love your reframe of shared wisdom and shared joy.
Yeah. When I have a difficult day, it's easy to feel alone.
Yeah.
And it's easy to forget the people who are there to support you. But something that really helps me in my sense of hyper independence and not wanting to reach out is feeling that I have all these ancestors holding me and pushing me forward, and their hands are on my back and they're not going to let me fall.
It's true.
And that sense of wisdom just feels so powerful, and it makes me believe that all of us can do anything we want to if we just hold on to that belief that we're not alone, even when we feel alone.
I just want to hold your hands right now. Thank you. That's so beautiful. I actually want to talk to you also about spirituality and the link between spirituality and mental health. I might be skipping ahead a sec, but I think, what you talked about in terms of your practice at Shakti, it's not, sometimes mental health care, we focus so much on these theories and the mind and these things, but actually, part of our healing journey and what makes us well is getting in our bodies and getting outside of our minds, right? How do we just feel and be and connect with something that is part of our purpose in the larger landscape of life?
Yeah, I think you're in the know.
Well, I work on this, but I think, it's important to know a little bit about your thoughts on why this is an important ingredient in wellness.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to first just define it in terms of psychology.
Thank you.
So in psychology, we believe that if you can manage your mind, you can manage your thoughts, your emotions, and the movement of your body. So everything starts with, if I want to pick up this cup and I want to have a sip of water, there's a thought and then there's the action. The thought happens so quickly, so we don't even believe there's a thought, but there is a thought. Anytime I feel something, the thought causes me to feel it. Anytime there's a thought, it's like, oh, I need to think about laundry. That happens, right? So the mind is responsible for our thoughts, our emotions, and the movement of our body.
Yeah.
And if we control this, psychology feels like we are going to be in a state of equilibrium and happiness. But I think spirituality taps into something even greater and more powerful. Spirituality says, ooh, but there's something above the mind.
Yeah.
In Western worlds, we call this the observer. In Eastern worlds, we call this the higher self, the soul. And it's the part that observes the mind. And if we actually for a second just say hello to ourselves, there's a voice that says hello. Right? Who's that voice?
Yeah.
Some will argue that it's the higher self. And this higher self, when it's above the mind, it taps into something that's greater. It gives us meaning to the things that we cannot explain. It gives us meaning to uncertainty. It allows for things like God and miracles and breakthroughs to happen without needing to know why. Yeah. Sometimes the mind gets so stuck onto the why that it stops the healing from happening. And so if we can surrender the need to know and just trust, that happens. And so you can see spirituality is really this link between logic and intuition, right? And I want to touch on something you brought up, like get into our bodies.
Yeah.
Right? The mind will say, psychology will say, hey, serotonin helps you feel happier. It's in the mind.
Right.
Today we've learned 90% of serotonin is formed in the body, in the gut.
Wow.
And so I think we should just be a little bit more open to the unexpected. And that's what spirituality is, just being open to the unexpected and seeing what happens.
I love that definition. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think there's so many ways to talk about our higher selves or spirituality. And often I think people don't look at spirituality and science as being congruent, but they really truly are, at least from my opinion. And I've actually been working a lot on this notion of what would happen if I just be. So what you're saying really connects.
How do you just be, if you don't mind me asking?
Not well, usually.
I appreciate that honesty.
Which is why I'm working on it, because I feel like I'm always observing my actions. I feel like I'm always being sort of critical of my speech or whatever I'm sharing. And so what would happen if I just let myself be and express and feel?
Yeah. I heard someone many, many years tell me that being a child and play is one of the most mature things you can do as an adult. And I didn't quite understand it and had a lot of judgment towards them because I was like, no, an adult is someone who's put together. They have
Adult is serious.
Yes, serious. Yes.
Yeah.
And as I have grown, because of my difficult childhood, I didn't have a chance to be a child. And so I'm playing now.
Yes.
And so what I've realized is when you play as an adult, you don't care what you think about yourself and you don't care what others think. You are just you're being.
Yes.
And that truly is the greatest maturity because you are just liberated, right?
Absolutely.
So I love that you're working on being, and I cannot wait to play with you.
Yes. I see some music festivals in our future.
Oh, down, down, and down.
I love that. Which brings me to my question about lifestyle. You know, I really appreciate your content that you put out on your Instagram, which I highly encourage everybody listening to follow Ektha and the content she shares, because every day it's like she's reading my mind and sharing something that I'm thinking about, but expressing it in a very poignant way. So, you know, I know we talked about, now we're talking about play, we talked about movement. You know, you told me how important the expression of boxing has been in your life. Like, let's talk about lifestyle a little bit. What are some things that you feel like people are doing that kind of, you know, I'm going to call one out, which is coffee. I feel like it's such a practice. For example, my grandmother, I'm talking to her about her wellness and really trying to make sure that her mind, body, social life is all functioning well. And unfortunately, coffee has side effects physiologically for my grandmother and her body system right now. So, but it also has side effects for her mind. And so to tell her, I'm sorry, woman who grew up in Colombia, you can't have café con leche every morning, cada mañana. She's like, oh my God, like, you're evil. You're taking away my favorite thing in life, which there are times to kind of, I think, just like surrender to happiness, right? But also helping her be aware that this is something that is impacting you, that maybe you hadn't thought about in terms of how it's affecting your mind and you know, bringing heightened maybe expressions of anxiety.
Yeah, we're, again, so rooted in our cultural beliefs that feels like something so inherent that you might be taking away. But hey, I have a really great decaffeinated coffee recipe for your grandmother. So I'll be sending that over with saffron in it and ginger and all the things that help reduce that fight or flight response that we get from coffee.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think you touched on two really big things that I think are important for everyone to know when it comes to lifestyle. One is exercise and the other is socialization. Exercise is the cheapest, most incredible medicine that you can ever have. And it's not as widely talked about. We know that endorphins and serotonin are these happy feelings that are released during exercise. And that is just second grade knowledge. And it is so sad that we're not previewed to how much more is released. There's this chemical, this protein, actually, and I'm going to butcher the name. It's called myokines.
Okay.
And it's this protein our muscles release when you exercise. And this protein is responsible for reducing depression. It builds neuroplasticity, it decreases inflammation, and it regulates the nervous system. So goodbye depression, goodbye anxiety, goodbye Alzheimer's, because Alzheimer's is because of inflammation in the brain. And that's not all. There's also this other protein that's boosted called BDNF that protects our brain.
Cool.
Can you believe this? Yeah.
I'm learning. This is so fascinating. I love it.
It's so fascinating, and it reminds me that nature gives us everything to self-correct.
Yeah.
And we don't need technology and advancements all the time. There is a time and place for it, but we don't need it all the time. We can tap into our inner resources, such as movement.
Yeah.
And when we look at these blue zone areas, they're not exercising or going to the gym. They're not taking these supplements.
They're carrying their children up a flight of stairs.
Yes.
And swimming in the ocean. And
yes. There's no Uber or sailboats taking them places, right?
Right.
Exactly. And so one of the most, and I think a fact I'll share is these proteins that are released, they're shown and studied to be as strong as SSRIs.
Wow.
Right? Wow. Yes. So if you aren't doing it, the number one thing you can do for your mental health is exercise.
I love that.
the number one thing you can do for longevity. I love biohacking longevity. This is my favorite thing in the world, which
Amazing.
is why I have this coffee recipe.
Yeah.
The number one thing you can do for longevity is socialization. Isolation is such a silent killer. And with technology today, with ChatGPT becoming friends and people developing relationships, I truly feel scared.
Yeah.
I feel like our society, our people are isolating even more because they think they're getting that connection through these virtual means.
I think that these 2 points are, they might seem obvious to some, but in the life that our culture encourages today, I think that it's all too often forgotten, even by people like myself, right? With this sort of consciousness, with such a premium placed on productivity and on, for example, like for me, my relationship with exercise and working out has been a journey. It's one that I'm really tapping into now. But for a while, I felt like, I didn't want people to focus on me physiologically and how I looked. But I was overlooking the value that I was missing out on from the experience of finding strength in my body and then all of the amazing chemicals that I didn't remember all of them.
Yeah, they're so complicated and hard.
But yeah, just how that simple lifestyle shift can make such a dramatic difference in one's wellness.
Absolutely. And, I think we grow up in a society that enforces beauty and looks and physique. And I love how you are just rewiring that. Like exercise doesn't have to be about that, but it could be about the strength within. It could be about the myokines. It could be about the BDNF. It could be about living longer with quality.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, so powerful. I could talk to you about this for so long. I mean, I think this has been such an amazing discussion. I want to make sure that people know how to follow you and connect with you if they're interested in working with you in some regard. What are the mechanisms that people should do that?
Yeah, you can reach me through our website, which is www.shaktitherapyhealing.com. And Shakti is spelled SHAKTI. I'm very active on Instagram, so come say hi, come learn tips, and that's at Shakti Therapy. Those are probably the 2 best ways, and you don't have to reach out just for therapy. You can reach out and just say hi, and we can connect and reduce that sense of isolation just collectively. So thank you. And for Jiva Mental Health, if you are South Asian and you are needing that support, know that we have a community for that. So you can reach us at info@Jiva Mental Health, JIVA.
Which is so beautiful. I had the pleasure of coming to your gala this year and seeing the vibrant community that you've built, which I know has been such an expression of yourself and your love for this mission. I want to ask, is there a quote that you want to share with our listeners today that you want people to leave with?
I think you might relate to this quote. It's a Rumi quote.
Oh, my favorite poet.
Right?
Yes.
And he says, the wound is the place where the light enters. And that is such a beautiful reminder that in our brokenness, we are still whole.
So beautiful. Thank you, Ektha. Thank you for joining us at Happy Hour.
Thank you for having me here, Tess. We did good. 42 minutes. Oh.
That was perfect.
Thank you so much for joining us for Happy Hour. We hope you walked away having learned something and feeling a little less alone in the journey. If you liked what you heard, it would mean so much to us if you subscribe so you can be notified every time we have a new episode. To learn more about what we are doing at HPY, go to thinkhpy.com. Until next time, we hope you feel heard. Take care.